Welcome to Spectrum News within the week. I am Emedion James coming to you live from Uyo. Let's take a look at the major headlines for today. President Tinubu decorates new service chief, urges them to deal with security threat. National Assembly approves Tinubu's $2.35 billion external loan request. Plus, Trump designates Nigeria country of particular concern over false Christian genocide claim. We'll bring you details of the stories and more in just a moment. Many thanks for staying tuned. This is Spectrum News within the week. We begin the news from the national scene where President Bola Tinubu within the week decorated the newly appointed service chiefs with their new ranks. The short ceremony took place in the council chamber of the presidential villa Abuja. The new chief of defense staff, formerly Lieutenant General Olufemi Oluyede, was decorated with the new rank of general. The new chief of army staff, formerly Major General Wahidi Shaibu, was decorated with the rank of Lieutenant General. The chief of naval staff, formerly Rear Admiral Idi Abbas, was decorated as Vice Admiral, while the chief of air staff, formerly Air Vice Marshal Kelvin Aneke, was decorated with the rank of Air Marshal. The Chief of Defense Intelligence, formerly Major General Emmanuel Undeyen, who was retained by the President, was elevated to the rank of Lieutenant General. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu has declared that his administration is committed to providing a credible, secure, verifiable and usable identity management system across the board, asserting that such a system is fundamental to the nation's developmental goals. According to a statement by presidential spokesperson Bayo Onanuga, President Tinubu spoke at the State House during the launch of the NINAUTHR, a digital mobile-based identity authentication application developed by the National Identity Management Commission. He added that his administration is leveraging technology to enhance efficiency, transparency, and accountability in governance. In the meantime, the presidency has revealed the reason Mariam Sander, who was sentenced to death in 2020 for the murder of her husband, was granted clemency by President Bola Tinubu recently. Speaking in an interview with newsmen, Special Advisor to President Tinubu on Information and Strategy Bayo Nanuga said Mariam was given clemency, not a pardon. Nanuga further explained that her crime was that of passion, adding that her cats were put into consideration. Recall that President Tinubu reduced the death sentence passed on Mariam Sander to 12 years imprisonment. Away from that, The federal government has commenced the disbursement of funds under the Tertiary Institution Staff Support Fund designed to strengthen staff welfare, institutional productivity and innovation across Nigerian tertiary institutions. This was contained in a statement made in Abuja by the Director, Press and Public Relations, Federal Ministry of Education, Folasade Boworo. Boworo, while quoting the Minister of Education, Dr. Tunji Alaus on the milestone, said the welfare was an initiative of President Bola Tinubu's renewed hope agenda. Also, President Bola Tinubu has tasked states to domesticate the National Urban Development Policy to bolster town planning. Tinubu, who was represented by the Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Ahmed Dangiwa, made the call at the 2025 Nigerian Institute of Town Planners 56th International Conference and Annual General Meeting in Abuja. The theme of the conference was Refocusing Planning and Administration Towards Sustainable Urban Governance and Development. He said that the federal government placed urban development at the heart of national transformation agenda. Still on the national scene, President Bola Tinubu has pledged to support the Dangote Refinery's plan to expand production capacity to 1.4 million barrels per day from 650,000 barrels per day. Tinubu gave the assurance at the 19th edition of the OTL African Downstream Conference and Exhibition in Lagos. The president was represented by the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Oil, Henneken Lokboberi, described the project as a game changer for Nigeria, West Africa, and the global energy market. He added that the refinery's expansion would not only boost Nigeria's self-sufficiency in refined products, but also strengthen energy supply across the continent. Recall that Aliko Dangote, president of Dangote Refinery, recently announced a plan to expand the refinery to 1.4 MBPT. In this next report, President Bola Tinubu has approved the introduction of a 15% ad valorem import duty on petrol and diesel import into Nigeria. The initiative is aimed at protecting local refineries and stabilizing the downstream market, but it is likely to raise pump prices. In a letter addressed to Federal Inland Revenue Service and Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, Tinubu directed immediate implementation of the tariff as part of what the government described as market-responsive import tariff framework. Away from that, the Civil Defense, Correctional, Fire and Immigration Services Board has released the names of candidates shortlisted for the Paramilitary Agency Recruitment Computer-Based Test. This is contained in a statement by the Secretary to the Board, retired Major General Abdul Malik Jubrin in Abuja. Reports say the agencies are the Nigerian Correctional Service, the Nigerian Immigration Service, Federal Fire Service, and Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps. The statement urged candidates who applied for recruitment into any of the 4 paramilitary agencies to visit its official recruitment portal from today to check if they had been shortlisted. Meanwhile, in a bid to strengthen and upscale steel production, the Federal Ministry of Steel Development and Stellar Steel Company Limited have signed a joint strategic cooperation declaration of $400 million to construct a modern steel plant in Ewekoro, Ogun State. This was made known in a statement issued by the ministry, explaining that the project will be developed in 3 phases, with the first phase expected to begin production by 2026. The Minister of Steel Development, Shaibu Andu, signed the agreement when he hosted Lee, president of Inner Galaxy Group, and other members of Stellar Steel Company Limited at the ministry's headquarters in Abuja. Let's move now to the red chambers, where the Senate within the week confirmed President Bola Tinubu's nominees for the position of service chiefs. Those confirmed are Olufemi Oluyede as Chief of Defense Staff, Wahidi Shaibu as Chief of Army Staff, Idi Abbas as Chief of Naval Staff, and Kelvin Aneke as Chief of Air Staff. The confirmation followed a 2-hour closed-door session where senators questioned the nominees on their plans to strengthen national security and reform the armed forces. Earlier, President Tinubu has urged the upper chamber to screen and confirm the nominees. In line with the president's request, the Senate chamber dedicated its Wednesday plenary to exercise, holding a closed-door session that lasted over 2 hours. In the meantime, the Senate has confirmed Bernard Doro as the Minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria following a brief screening session that lasted less than 30 minutes. Doro, who becomes the third ministerial nominee from Plateau State, used the opportunity to outline his vision for fostering an inclusive humanitarian ecosystem in the country. He promised to create a humanitarian ecosystem that is inclusive, guided by impartiality and independence. Doro told lawmakers during his appearance that he will create synergy between security agencies to better target individuals affected by crisis, which he notes is always a challenge. In a separate development, the National Assembly has approved President Bola Tinubu's request to secure a total of $2.347 billion from the international capital market to part finance the 2025 budget deficit and refinance the maturing euro bonds. Also granted was Tinubu's request to issue a $500 million debut sovereign sukuk in the international capital market to fund infrastructure projects and diversified Nigeria's financing sources. The approval was given request after considering the report of both committees on aid, loans, and debt management. In the meantime, 6 new states have been proposed by the Joint Committee of the Senate and House of Representatives on Constitution Review. The proposal was one of the key resolutions of the 2-day retreat, co-chaired by Deputy Senate President Baru Jibrin and House of Representatives Deputy Speaker Benjamin Kalu in Lagos. The Joint Committee considered 69 bills, 55 state creation requests, 2 boundary adjustment, and 278 local government creation requests during the retreat. During the consideration of the 55 requests for state creation, the Joint Committee unanimously resolved that 6 additional states should be created. If approved, the number of states will increase from 36 to 42. A state will therefore be created in each of the 6 geopolitical zones of the Northwest, Northeast, North Central, Southwest, South-South, and Southeast. In another development, the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Batokun, has approved the appointment of Assistant Inspector General of Police, Nkechi Eze, as the first director of the newly established Directorate of Forces Medical Services. In a statement today, The force public relations officer CSP Benjamin Hundeyin said SS appointment follows the recent upgrade of the Nigerian Police Force Medical Section to a full-fledged directorate. Hundeyin stated that the appointment is aimed at providing comprehensive and efficient healthcare services for police personnel nationwide. On electoral matters, the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor George Amibotang, has pledged to work closely with the National Assembly to deliver a credible, fair and transparent electoral process for Nigeria. According to a statement by INEC on Monday, Professor Amibotang made the commitment while addressing participants at the 56th Annual National Conference of the Nigerian Association of Law Teachers held at the Federal University of Lokoja, where he was also honored for his dedication and service. Speaking on ongoing efforts to amend the Electoral Act, the INEC chairman said the Commission would actively engage with lawmakers to ensure that reforms reflect lessons learned from past elections and strengthen public confidence in the process. He emphasized that a well-structured legal framework is the foundation of a credible electoral system. In politics, barely weeks to its national convention, fresh crackdown have emerged in the People's Democratic Party as former Jigawa State Governor Sule Lamido rejected the endorsement of Tanimu Daraki as the party's consensus candidate for national chairman. The disagreement has again thrown the opposition party into fresh tension and set the stage for a courtroom battle, even as Daraki's camp pushes ahead with its campaign. This comes as the party suspended the screening of applicants for its 2025 elective national convention earlier scheduled last week, citing unforeseen circumstances. The decision, coming less than a month before the much-anticipated convention, has raised concerns with the party and among political observers about possible internal challenges and implication for the opposition preparations. In education, the West African Examination Council has dismissed reports alleging that it issued a directive restricting senior secondary students to specific subjects for the forthcoming 2026 West African Senior School Certificate Examination for school candidates. In a statement issued by the acting head of public affairs, Moyisola Adeshina, and signed on behalf of the head of national office, WAEC described the report as unfounded assumptions and urged schools and general public to disregard them. Amid recent social media reports suggesting that schools had been directed to limit student subject combination for the 2026 examination, WAEC reiterated that such claims were false and not issued by the council. In this next report, Nigerian Nobel laureate Wole Soyinka has said the US revoked his visa and banned him from the country. The 91-year-old author, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1986, said the US consulate asked him to bring in his passport so his visa could be cancelled in person as new unspecified information had come to light. Soyinka called the invitation a rather curious love letter from an embassy in a news conference held on Tuesday, and told organizations hoping to invite him to the US not to waste their time. The US Embassy in Nigeria has said it cannot comment on individual cases. Still to come in the news. 149 Turkish officials suspended in betting probe. Stay tuned for details of this in just a moment. Many thanks for staying tuned. This is Spectrum News within the week. We move now to Africa, where Madagascar's military ruler named today a government's replicants with familiar faces from his island's political elite, sidelining young protesters call for a clean slate after President Andre Rajolina's ouster. Angry over chronic power cuts and economic stagnation, the poverty-stricken Indian Ocean Islands Gen Z protesters sparked a mass movement for change, which led to Rajolina's flight after Colonel Michael Randri and Nirina mutinied and seized power. But Randri and Nirina, who was sworn in as president on October 17, announced that he had selected a 28-person cabinet, which includes several ex-ministers and Rajolina's former right-hand man, after consulting Madagascar's main power brokers. Several key figures from the Rajolina's era made a comeback in a new cabinet, raising fears over whether the new government will heed the Gen Z's movement demands. Still in Africa, Sudan's military chief, General Abdel Fattah Burhan, says commanders in the war-torn city of El Fasher made the decision to withdraw in order to spare civilians from what he described as systematic destruction and killing at the hands of Rapid Support Forces (RSF). The remarks came as activists and humanitarian groups reported that RSF fighters seized a major army base, the final government stronghold in the western Darfur region, marking a significant turning point in a conflict that has devastated Sudan since April 2023. Burhan vowed retaliation, accusing the paramilitary of committing crimes not only in El Fasher but across the country. Away from that, Cameroon remains tense following an election earlier this month that extended President Paul Biya's term in office. At 92, he is the world's oldest state leader, and after more than 4 decades in power, young people want things to change. Protesters and security forces have clashed for days in many cities across the country in a build-up and aftermath of the vote. Opposition leaders and supporters say the election was rigged and blame Biya for the problems facing the country. Activist Andre Belsi said that Cameroonians had long been afraid and found themselves saying this is too much. According to them, there had been widespread international criticism of the violent crackdown by security forces on the demonstration. Civil society groups say at least 23 people have been killed since the weekend and over 200 have been arrested. Today in Tanzania, President Samia Suluhu Hassan has been declared the winner of Tanzania's presidential election, securing another term in office amid days of unrest across the country. According to the Electoral Commission, Samia won 98% of the vote, sweeping nearly 32 million ballots cast in Wednesday's election. International observers have expressed concern over the lack of transparency and widespread turmoil that has reportedly left hundreds of people dead and hundreds injured. The nationwide internet shutdown is making it difficult to verify the death toll. The government has sought to play down the scale of the violence, and authorities have extended a curfew in a bid to quell the unrest. Meanwhile, tensions escalated in Tanzania yesterday as hundreds of demonstrators clashed with police in the commercial capital, Dar es Salaam, demanding that the Electoral Commission hold the release of results from Wednesday's national vote. The opposition has rejected the early result, particularly in semi-autonomous Zanzibar, where the Electoral Commission declared incumbent President Hussein Mwinyi the winner with 78.8% of the votes. Opposition leaders denounced what they called massive fraud, vowing to announce the next steps soon. We move now to the White House, where US President Donald Trump within the week went to Malaysia for the 47th ASEAN Summit and a Cambodian-Thailand peace accord that is expected to be signed. Trump was welcomed by Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim with a ceremony. He landed around 10 a.m. local time at the Kuala Lumpur International Airport. The summit, themed Inclusivity and Sustainability, focuses on regional security, economic resilience, maritime disputes, and the impact of global tariffs. Among attendees are South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, South Korean President Lee Jae-myung, Chinese Premier Li Qiang, and Japan's first female Prime Minister Sena Takahashi. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, and New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon are also participating. In a related development, Japan and United States within the week agreed to a deal on new generation nuclear power reactors and rare earth, as Tokyo seeks a way back to export market for its nuclear technology and both look to reduce China's dominance over key electronic components. US President Donald Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Sena Takahashi signed a framework agreement on Tuesday for securing the supply of rare earth used in everything from cars to fighter jets. They signed the document, which included critical minerals at the neo-Baroque style Akasaka Palace in Tokyo, beneath three chandeliers swathed in gold ornamentation as aides applauded. Also speaking to thousands of military service members abroad, an aircraft carrier at the Yokosuka Naval Base in Japan on Tuesday Donald Trump said that he was prepared to send more than the National Guards into cities to enforce his crackdown on crime and immigration. He also talked about using the military at home and abroad. Trump defended the military's recent attacks on boats, saying that the radical left had claimed that strikes had killed fishermen and not suspected drug smugglers. We move now to South Korea, where US President Donald Trump within the week and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping met for the first time in 6 years, raising hopes for a de-escalation of tensions between the world's two biggest economies. Trump described the talks held in South Korea as amazing, while Beijing said they had reached a consensus to resolve major trade issues. Relations have been tense since Trump began imposing new tariffs on China, prompting retaliations from Beijing. The two agreed to truce in May, but tensions remained high. Thursday's talks did not lead to a formal agreement, but the announcement suggests they are closer to a deal, the details of which have been subject to behind-the-scenes negotiations. Meanwhile, China has agreed to suspend export control measures it had placed on rare earth, and this is crucial for the production of everything from smartphones to fighter jets. This has been seen as a key win for Trump from his meeting with Xi. In the immediate aftermath of the meeting, the US also said it would drop part of the tariff it had levied on Beijing over the flow of ingredients used in making fentanyl to the United States. Trump has imposed severe tariff on China as well as Canada and Mexico for their perceived failure to clamp down on the flow of that drug. There was, however, no mention of a breakthrough on TikTok. In Russia has tested the nuclear-powered Burak cruise missile, Moscow top general has said. Chief of General Staff Valery Gerasimov told President Vladimir Putin in a televised meeting that they have launched a multi-hour flight of a nuclear-powered missile and it covered a 14,000-kilometer distance, which is not the limit. The low-flying experimental weapon, first announced in 2018, has been hailed as having a potentially unlimited range and ability to evade missile defenses. Western experts have previously cast doubt over missile strategy value and Russia's claims of having successfully tested it. So on the foreign scene, President Donald Trump has called on U.S. military leaders to resume testing nuclear weapons in order to keep pace with other countries such as Russia and China. He wrote on social media just before meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping in South Korea, and I quote, "Because of other countries' testing programs, I have instructed the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis." The U.S. has more nuclear weapons than any other country, Trump added. He further stated that Russia is second and China a distant third. Meanwhile, this comes just days after Trump denounced Russia for testing a nuclear-powered missile. The Kremlin says its tests were not nuclear. Let's turn the spotlight right now to the royal family, where reports say that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor will not have to leave Royal Lodge immediately and could move to Sandringham as late as the new year. On Thursday, King Charles stripped his younger brother of his titles and honors and moved to force him out of his Windsor mansion. He will be moving to a property on the King's Norfolk exit, paid for by the monarch. The dramatic statement came after months of pressure over Andrew's private life and as his ties to disgraced pedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein continue to dog the royals. Andre has, however, always denied any wrongdoing. Meanwhile, the government has said it had no plans to pass a law to formally remove Andre from the line of succession. In this next report, U.S. President Donald Trump has designated Nigeria as a country of particular concern, a status reserved for nations engaged in or tolerating severe violations of religious freedom under the International Religious Freedom Act. In a post on Truth Social, Trump claimed Christianity in Nigeria faces a serious existential threat because radical Islamists are killing thousands of the country's Christian population. However, a review of Nigeria's security situation by many other media and human rights organizations show that while insecurity persists in many parts of Nigeria, the claim of a Christian genocide is false. The U.S. designation comes after weeks of campaigns and demands by some Republican lawmakers for the U.S. to sanction Nigeria for allowing the persecution of Christians. Still to come in the news. 149 Turkish officials suspended in betting probe. Stay tuned for details of this in just a moment. Many thanks for still staying tuned. This is Spectrum News within the week. We go now to a business scene where Dangote Refinery has announced that it is increasing its production from 650,000 barrels per day to 1.4 million barrels per day. When completed, the expansion could make the facility the largest refinery in the world, surpassing the Jamnagar Refinery in India. Speaking at the press conference in Lagos on Sunday, the president of Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, said the move reflects confidence in Nigeria's future and aligns with President Bola Tinubu's vision of making the country a global supplier of refined petroleum products. Dangote commended the federal government for its support and for implementing policies that have spurred industrial growth, including Nigeria's First Policy, Naira for Crude policy, and One-Stop Shop initiative. He said these policies have revolutionized the downstream sector and encouraged private investment in local refining. Still in business, petroleum marketers have warned that the pump price of premium motor spirit, popularly called petrol, would exceed 1,000 naira per litre following President Bola Tinubu's approval of a 15% import tariffs on fuel import. The new policy, which takes effect after a 30-day transition period expected to end on 21 November 2025, is part of the government's strategy to protect local refiners and reduce the influx of cheaper imported products that threaten domestic refining investment. However, marketers say the move could backfire and push retail prices beyond the reach of average Nigerians. We move now to sports where the Turkish Football Federation (TFF) has suspended 149 referees and assistant referees after an investigation found hundreds of professional match officials in the country had betting accounts. Bans ranging from 8 to 12 months, based on the severity of the act, have been imposed for involvement in betting activity, with investigation into 3 other officials still ongoing. The full list of the penalized officials were published on the TFF website. On Monday, it was revealed a 5-year probe has found 371 of 571 match officials have betting accounts, with 152 of those actively gambling. While some had only bet once, 42 had bet on more than 1,000 football matches, with one official found to have placed 18,227 bets. Away from that, Chairman of the National Sports Commission, Segun Diko, has denied allegations of misappropriation of the $1.2 million FIFA fund meant for the construction of the mini stadium in Kebbi State. Diko, who spoke in an interview within the week, stated that no one collected the money, insisting that FIFA directly managed the project funds. He explained that under FIFA's project structure, the governing body appoints consultants, supervisors, and pay contractors directly, leaving the Nigerian Football Federation (NFF) with no access to the funds. The NSC chairman noted that the project was not valued at today's exchange rate, clarifying that it was first approved in 2015 and procurement began in 2016. Also, Bayern Munich alias Arena is the sole candidate for the 2028 Champions League final, while Wimbledon and the renovated Camp Nou are both vying for the 2019 final, UEFA said. Munich was the only city that stepped forward for the 2028 final after hosting it in 2025 when Paris Saint-Germain thrashed Inter Milan 5-0. Munich also hosted the Elite European Club final in 1979, 1993 and 1997 in the Olympic Stadium and 2012 and 2025 at Allianz Arena. This season, the final is scheduled for the Puskás Arena in Budapest, while the Metropolitano in Madrid hosts in 2027. In Nigerian sport, Nigeria has qualified for the 2026 Women's African Cup of Nations WAFCON, following a 3-1 aggregate win over neighbors Benin Republic. The Super Falcons within the week drew 1-1 with the Amazons of Benin Republic in the second leg of the qualifiers, played on Tuesday in Abeokuta, Ogun State. But a 0-2 victory in a reverse fixture in Lome, Togo, courtesy of goals from Esther Okoronkwo and Chiwendu Ihezuo, was enough to secure Nigeria's ticket for the tournament with a 3-1 aggregate win. Defender Ashley Plumtree headed in from a brilliant Okoronkwo's corner to give Nigeria the lead at the MKO Abiola Stadium in Ogun. It was the first El Ittihad star first goal for the Super Falcons since switching alliance with England to Nigeria in 2017. In this next report, Borussia Dortmund eliminated Eintracht Frankfurt from the German Cup in the second round yesterday, winning 4-2 on penalties after the match finished 1-1. Dortmund were faultless from the sport with Fabio Silva, Niklas Süle, Kanya Chukwuemeka and Felix Nemecha all converting, while Ritus Doan and Faiz Jaibi both missed penalties for the home side. Frankfurt's Mario Götze and Ansgar Kuf, both cup winners with Dortmund, combined to put the home side in front after 7 minutes. Götze threaded the ball through the Dortmund defense, allowing Kuf to stroke home. Dortmund hit back 3 minutes after the break. Julian Bird tapping in a pinpoint. Julian Reiser scores from close range. Still in sport, former Fenerbahce player Serhat Akin has named Galatasaray Victor Osimhen as the greatest striker ever to grace the Turkish Super League. Osimhen enjoyed a stellar campaign last season while on loan at Galatasaray. The Nigerian international recorded 45 goals involvement in 41 appearances across competitions for Galatasaray. The 26-year-old, who has been impressive for Galatasaray so far this season, led his team to win the Turkish Super League title and the Turkish Cup. Let's move now to entertainment, where legendary Nigerian musician Innocent Idibia, widely known as Jubaba, has written a deeply emotional open letter to commemorate his 25th anniversary in music industry, expressing profound appreciation to everyone who had played a part in his remarkable journey. In a touching piece titled Open Letter of Gratitude to Baba at 25 years in the industry within the week, the multi-award winning artist reflected on his musical odyssey, the people who supported him, and the lessons he had gathered over the years. He described his career as one filled with gratitude, memories, lessons, and love, while acknowledging that his success story would not have been possible without the faith and the support of those who stood by him even in uncertain times. Sun Entertainment, Nigerian indigenous rapper Olamide Adedeji popularly known as Olamide, has opened up about his strategy in the music industry, revealing that that identifying his audience was key. The local rapper Kuno explained that he is comfortable being an indigenous artist, stressing that he is not desperate for international validation. Speaking in a recent interview with Newsman, Olamide stated that he would not change his sound or switch his style to appeal to a Westerner audience. Lastly, on the news at this time, European-based Nigerian Afrobeat sensation Charles Onyeabor made history on October 24, 2025 as he sold out the iconic Hard Rock Cave in Florence, Italy within the week. Charles, who is the son of Afro-funk legend William Onyeabor, delivered a high-energy performance that seamlessly blended Afrobeat, soul, funk and modern rhythm, a sound that is distinctively his own. Performing hit tracks such as Ifunkili, As Ide Play, Ide Show, and his recent club anthem, Cho Cho Cho. Charles commanded the stage with a magnetic presence that had the audience dancing from start to finish. The night also featured a stellar lineup of guest performances, including DJ Bass, DJ Top G, UK-based Afrobeat personality Adesope Olajide, Henry Afrobeat Rome, Young Game, and Farouk, among others. And that's all we have for you at this time. Do ensure to follow us on social media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website at spectrumtvlive.ng. You have been watching Spectrum News within the week. I am Emedion James. Enjoy the rest of your day and Happy New Month.